Hello, and thank you so much for clicking on this video today. My name is Glynn Jones, and I am one of the contributing editors at the Gamer Social Club website. Today, I am bringing you an interview that I did with Jess Kashdan-Brown, one of the members of the Hermit House indie dev team, to talk with her about indie game dev, being part of a small team, and their first game, A Home Below. Thank you again so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so Jess, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Uh,
Thank you for
and
having me.
not at all. And yeah, let's get straight into it. Can you please tell us about yourself a little bit, your role, obviously, in the studio, and of course, the team and the studio itself, please?
Yeah, of course. So we are a studio called Hermit House, recently become a company. I am one of three co-founders. We are currently just three people at the moment. I am the writer and producer for the game, and I am also working with Ivan, who is the programmer, and Blythe, who is the lead artist.
Fantastic. So yeah, a small, very small team, which it was that sort of by design, and how have you found managing your roles? Of course, as you say, your sort of your personal focus is more on the writing side of things, and then of course, as you say, Blythe and Ivan have their sort of skill sets. How do you find sort of having to share the load, as it were?
Yeah, to be honest, it is really nice working as a small team. I think we've come together in quite an unusual way. We are actually a family. Um, Ivan is my brother, and Blythe is his girlfriend. So we've kind of
Amazing.
come together through shared interests, and it's really nice working with a team like that that you know incredibly well. And we've worked on other projects together before, starting to make games together. And Ivan and Blythe have made previous games together that were kind of shorter 2D games. So really, we came together for this project partly because they wanted to work on something more ambitious that was like a bigger 3D game, and they realized they would need probably more people working on it with them, and they wanted to introduce like a much longer narrative story to the game as well. So that was where I came in. I have a background in creative writing. We've all come from completely different backgrounds as well. I mean, Blythe is a fine artist, and Ivan has a background in filmmaking. So we're
Wow,
bringing that there on the game.
that's
But yeah,
fantastic.
I mean, a small team is really nice. I think
Mm.
although we have our own specialized sort of individual roles, we all do the game design together. And from the start, the idea has been very much a kind of back and forth between all three of us, pushing ideas around, sharing roles, collaborating on things, before then kind of dividing things up. But I mean, we still all pitch into the game design equally, really, making sure that we are all working on something that we're really passionate about that speaks to all of us. I think that's really important for keeping super motivated. And it's really nice. I think some projects can feel like they're one person's idea that you're pitching into, but this really feels like a joint thing we've kind of come up with together.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, the very sort of organic feeling way it sounds like that the game is coming together between the three of you, but also it's nice to hear about another studio that isn't not that there's obviously anything wrong with it, it's just that it's the common path of teams coming together normally through college experience together, or meeting through that sort of environment in some capacity, maybe post grad or something like that. But we're getting more stories about things like families working together, and building games together. I think maybe one of the best examples being, from my knowledge, Cuphead, which was started by a studio called Studio MDHR. And again, they, as a family, I think it was two brothers. One was married. The wife got involved, and it was one of those cases where they suddenly discovered she was a great artist or something, and so they sort of hired her on
Yeah.
as an artist afterwards without knowing that she had that skill, which is very fortunate. But it's nice. It's lovely to hear about these sort of kind of homegrown kind of origins for studios in that respect. And I imagine that brings a kind of different energy. And again, as you say, you have to sort of, like you would in the family, you all pitch in. You know, you're just used to that kind of ethos in that respect. You know, it takes a village kind of thing. Instead of having a child, you've got this game you want to build and put together and finally bring to the public, and it needs just as much attention from all of you, and will have many different demands, and you have to sort of meet them, I guess, which is really interesting. And yeah,
Yeah.
like sort of jumping ahead, I guess, in a little bit, what would be one of those sort of challenges that you've faced then as a team, like whilst building the game? Like, has there been one particular example you can think of where you kind of all had to come together and go like, how are we going to handle this? Is this something maybe that we don't want to do, or we have to see it through and it's just going to be a struggle? Or was there maybe like a sort of maybe not even development related, you know, sort of hurdle to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I think in an interesting way, I don't think we've really come across too many problems of like a lack of motivation or like struggling with something, in that this has been something that we were all really excited to do, and we've all done like a load of research behind the game before kind of starting with the idea and coming to it. I think if anything, the biggest challenge initially for us was overscoping, in that we did so much research and we had so many ideas that we wanted to put into the game, based off of everything that we'd found, that I think the first few weeks really were us just pushing ideas back and forth and going a bit crazy, which was really good and really useful for getting everything down and having like a basis to work from. But we did have to do quite a lot of kind of carving from that to make an experience that wasn't too overloaded and was still incredibly fun to play.
Fantastic. No, well, very well done as well, handling all that, you know, those sort of pressures and you know, and again, using that passion and your own sort of you know, drive to, you know, to persevere. I think it's tough, especially with small teams and especially with solo developers, where, you know, unless you're part of a community in some respect, you kind of feel like you're on your own, you know, and you're sort of fighting the elements all the way, and it doesn't have to be, you know, in that respect, which I think is very, very good. Um, right. Well, let's talk a little bit more maybe about the game itself. Then we haven't actually. I don't think we actually mentioned it by name yet. A Home Below is the title of your game, and I got a chance to obviously play the demo at EGX this year a couple of weeks back, um,
Mhm.
and I had an absolutely wonderful time with it. I immediately fell in love with it. It's the sort of thing I just vibe with on such a level. It's the sort of thing that I feel like I've sort of always enjoyed these sorts of games ever since, you know, playing them as a young child. Just, you know, fun 3D platformers where you get to explore environments and sort of piece things together
Mm.
yourself as you play. You know, but instead of me telling everybody about the game, of course, I want to hear about it from you. Like, so where did the inspiration for A Home Below really come through from? Was it a personal experience for one of you, or was this something that you kind of all just found that you kind of all agreed on, was like, this is something that we all want to talk about, this is something we all want to see be realized?
So I think the inspiration for it came from quite a few different places, really. I mean, all of us have a real interest in environmental stories and a connection with nature, and wanting to tell stories about nature and about the environment. Um, a lot of the big kind of initiating kind of ideas behind it came from actually encountering an article about a town in North Wales called Fairbourne,
Hmm.
um, which is being decommissioned in the kind of 2050s, because it is due to be uninhabitable because it will be kind of underwater. And it's due to be underwater kind of by 2070-ish. And that, I think, really captured our imaginations. And we ended up doing a lot of research around that and this idea of, you know, entire towns kind of under the water, but
Yeah.
also the kind of future of that, of being re-inhabited by sea creatures, what kind of environments that would create. But then it's also been motivated by a big desire to tell non-human stories and how those are woven in with human stories. And also a lot of reading that, I mean, I did a master's in environmental humanities, so I've been doing a lot of environmental research over the last couple of years.
Hmm.
And I got really interested in rapid animal adaptations to climate change that people are finding, like strange sudden things like lizards adapting really suddenly to hurricanes, in a way that we didn't realize adaptations were possible on that scale at that rate.
Hmm.
It kind of is always assumed that it's a very slow evolutionary thing, but actually a lot of animals are showing a lot of aptitude in the face of climate change. And hermit crabs in particular kind of struck our imagination. I think we all loved playing a lot of underwater exploration games, and there is something about marine life that's really fascinating. And I think it's a biodiversity that you don't get to see very much of, because to be able to see it, you have to be a diver and have all of that training and all of that experience. But the ability to play underwater games kind of transports you into this biome that you don't usually get to experience. So we were really fascinated with the actual biodiversity of UK oceans that a lot of people don't realize is there. And then also, particularly with hermit crabs, as kind of very interesting animals that would be quite likely to survive climate change, and that they're already showing quite a lot of adaptations, by way of wearing litter and various kind of found
Hmm.
objects as shells. They seem quite happy to adapt to whatever is available to them. They're omnivores, they're scavengers, they eat absolutely anything, so they're likely to always be able to have food sources. But they also don't make their own shells, and there was a lot of stuff we were encountering about shells and ocean acidification, a lot of small shells becoming more fragile and harder to make,
Oh.
whereas larger shells are easier to make because they require different materials, that are more widely available even in acidifying oceans.
Hmm.
So we were also kind of fascinated with this idea that hermit crabs keep growing throughout their lives, but their growth capacity is limited by the size of the shells they have access to.
Of course.
Um, there's an idea of kind of how big could a hermit crab get if it starts to adapt to where anything is shells, really.
Oh, wow. Yeah, wow. I didn't even consider that. I mean, obviously, you have obviously done your research on this sort of thing, and this is all very new to me, but it's fascinating as well. Again, the story of the town obviously being decommissioned and sort of inevitably possibly tumbling into the ocean. Uh, it's a very striking kind of visual. Like, I mean, I think we've every now and then we've seen a clip or two of, something similar to that happening in certain, rural locations on the coast. Someone's garden suddenly disappears, or their garage, just collapses and is swept away. But yeah, the idea that a whole settlement where hundreds of people no doubt lived and had their lives for however long is then all
Mm,
just, in a way, it sort of disappears, but it's also then it's sort of kept in a different state, as you said, sort of in this new environment, which then it learns to adapt to it. And so you have, as you say, your hermit crabs scuttling around. And of course, I particularly enjoyed starting the demo with the shot glass on my back, which which I thought was very very cute. And then inevitably finding, I think it was a bottle cap or something like that, which
yeah.
and with that, and in your game, there's sort of mechanics tied to each of the shells. It seems imparting you with a sort of new ability of some sort of mechanic that will allow you to traverse further through the
Mm,
environment, which is of course this fully submerged home to this family, the Salt family, if I can remember correctly. Is it the Salt
yes,
family? Yeah,
it is.
brilliant. Yes. And of course, going around and finding elements of that family's history, and a lot of it obviously to do with nature again and the environment. And I think for people who obviously there are some people who get turned off by the idea of wanting to tackle big subjects like that. But I think the way that you handle it in your game with Home Below, it's very subtle. It's there, it's apparent, but it's not. You're not driving home any sort of like monolithic messages of like this is what we need to do right now. There's no big blocks of text to tell the player like this is how you should feel. It's like no, come through, experience the game, and you'll learn really what this is all about through playing the game. And I think that's not necessarily lost art, but there is not enough focus, I think, put on that sometimes when it comes to game development, it seems, where a narrative is really important to the people making the game, and they kind of lose sight of how to make sure the game keeps up with the narrative in a way that feels cohesive, and doesn't feel like it's just sort of two things that have been put together. A Home Below really feels it very feels sort of natural and organic in its design, it seems, along with the narrative and themes.
Thank you.
And I have to say as well, through playing the game, even just for the 10 to 15 minutes that I had, I felt like I knew what the whole game was going to be. And I don't mean that I sort of guessed the ending or anything like that at all. Just that having experienced that small amount of the game, I was like, oh well, I'm having had the chance to explore the family room at this home, and catch a glimpse of the scary octopus out the window and things like that. My favorite animal. So I was very pleased to see that. Things like that. I was like, oh, I can't wait to get and see what's going to happen when I get to the kitchen, or when I get to maybe the study, or the bedroom and things like that, and watch as more of the game unfolds and more of the mechanics are revealed, but also just more about this family, their relationship with where they lived, with the environment, and then of course, as you say, this sort of um, this sort of this new life now living in this home, this whole entire aquatic family, I guess, or uh, sort of setting now takes over,
Absolutely.
which is amazing. And the next thing I want to ask quickly about this is, other than obviously the inspirations and the challenges and stuff like that, is there any one thing in particular you'd want to sort of highlight about the game, with regards to, um, not necessarily like maybe the messaging or anything like that, but or is there anything that speaks to you as sort of this sets apart a Home Below from any other game that you might think could be like this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've covered quite a lot of the kind of elements of the game really
Mm,
nicely there. Thank you so much for talking about it in that way. It's so nice to hear how it's resonated with you. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely to do with this kind of wordless, non-human experience where you are experiencing and feeling what it's like to be a little hermit crab in this kind of vast space that's seen anew from a non-human perspective, but the interweaving of the hermit crab's story of trying to find bigger and better shells to survive, and kind of seeking out other hermit crabs and a kind of family, and having all of these interactions with other sea creatures, interwoven with a story that you gradually uncover about the people that once lived in the house and what happened to them,
mhm,
and how they kind of dealt with their town going underwater, but in a subtle way that is kind of optional for players to engage with, really, and is sort of dotted around through these sort of memory objects.
mm,
So yeah, that would be important to us to have it as kind of environmental storytelling that is there as a flavor and a background and a strong narrative if you want to engage with it, but to whatever degree you want to engage with it. So you get more out of it the more you look into it, but you can still enjoy it, even if you're more focusing on the hermit crab's narrative. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think really for us, the thing we hope stands out about it is that we haven't seen this done before. We've seen like the big underwater exploration games, and we've seen narrative led like house exploration games, but combining the two and having that non human perspective at the heart of it in a kind of explorative, non violent, casual, peaceful kind of gaming experience. I mean, the other thing I think that is worth highlighting as well is that there is a lot of research behind this, even if
mm,
it's not kind of super, super obvious, in that we don't want this to be like educational and kind of really pointing out incredibly obviously where the research is. The research is all kind of the flavor behind it, but all of the hermit crab's abilities and behaviors are based on real hermit crab abilities and behaviors. Obviously, the town setting is based on real life news stories, and also all the other sea life is based on real species that do or could inhabit that coastline. But also the marine ecology, like the relationships you have and the things that you can do through having those relationships with the other sea creatures are real things that hermit crabs would do in relationships with those other creatures. So, I mean, things like, for example, the anemone. There is a point in the demo that we have at the moment in which you can pick up an anemone and put it on your shell, which is something that hermit crabs do, and they have these symbiotic relationships with anemones, which we think is absolutely fascinating and really lovely, and something that we're hoping you will get to in later levels of the game, are what the anemone offers you in return by way of protection.
Oh, fun. Yeah, so it sounds like some quite sort of diverse mechanics then in that respect. It doesn't sound like it's sort of going to be because of course I got to experience the one upgrade as it were, which was the ability to sort of gently glide down after a little sort of short jump. But this doesn't sound like just another sort of movement mechanic, say, which you would assume, I guess, given the history of 3D platforming sort of sandbox games, like, oh, a double jump is clearly going to be next, or something like that. In that respect, I don't know. Herbert crabs might be able to. I'm learning a lot about them, but at the same time, the relation, as you say, the taking um, the research that you've done and actually then using that to reinforce your mechanics and stuff like that, I think is, again, such a perfect example of where you have brought the two or many elements of this together in a way that feels like it was a natural blueprint for a game's design. And you're absolutely right. I think what you highlighted there with the way in which we've experienced different genres, and it's something that I absolutely adore about game design. It's the idea of taking, especially two different genres, and just slapping them together and seeing kind of like how it works. But yeah, as you say, like an underwater sort of exploration game with maybe a narrative-led, home-based sort of visual novel experience or walking sim experience, for example, and bringing those together, and then having this non-human perspective, but still tackling and talking about the human elements is, from what I can tell, never been done before. So I commend you, all three of you, for that in particular. Very excited to see the end of it and how it all comes together.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the demo isn't, the demo isn't necessarily the full experience at the moment. It was a wonderful thing for us to be able to play test that at EGX and coming up with more ideas off of the back of that. So there is a lot more with the shells. It's not just, as you say, like it's not just those movement mechanics. We want each shell to tie in to the narrative that the hermit crab is experiencing, and also the narrative of the kind of human story. But also each shell is kind of unique in helping you through the puzzles of each level. So they're quite uniquely placed within each room. And we want that to be a big focus of it. They are quite meaningful objects to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with EGX, and I'm assuming your own time obviously spent with the game, maybe even showing friends and family. Have you heard much as far as feedback, as far as what people have said about the game? Whether it's oh, is there going to be more of this particular element, or what are your plans for future levels or anything like that? Like, is there much you can share as far as that sort of feedback and what you've sort of taken on board for the game?
Yeah, I mean, EGX was an incredible experience for us. It was so nice having so many people play the game and engage with it so completely, and offer really lovely feedback. And for the most part, it was really positive feedback. But there have been some really specific things that have been lovely and extremely useful for us. At the moment, we're experimenting with implementing kind of food collectibles. hermit crabs kind of feed on algae and things, and a lot of people were saying that they would like more reason to explore all of the nooks and crannies of the room. So we are looking into that, but also kind of how that feeds in to the rest of the gameplay. So looking at,
Hmm.
okay, if you eat this food, what do you get to use it for, and how that might feed into your interactions with other sea creatures, and potentially offering them food in order to experience the interactions. But this is still like systems that we're working with. We have lots of ideas. We're kind of testing each of them out to see how it feels in game.
Mm.
And at the moment, we're really kind of working on that longer narrative of the hermit crab story, particularly through encounters with other creatures like the octopus, and how that evolves over time alongside the family story. And this is kind of helping us shape a longer, fuller demo that we're hoping to release to the public um, in kind of March time next year.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll put that in the calendar. That's brilliant. And yeah, as a self-proclaimed collectathon fan, it does. I will say that the option to find things out in the environment is always fun, especially if they're, for me personally, put into a little list of how many there are. It's always nice to watch that, sort of ding once you've collected them all or whatever it might be. But at the same time, I am someone who is very aware of when collectibles are used in a way where it just feels like they're there for the sake of being there. And I can appreciate you not wanting there just to have, oh, well, there's 120 different bits of algae to find throughout the house. Like, go and find them, and it may not be just a simple matter of, and now you unlock little, hats to go on the back of your shells. It's like, no, let's make this tie in nicely with the rest of it, as we have done with so much of the game's design already. So yeah, no, I think that's the right call. You don't want to uh, sort of gamify as much as obviously we're all here to play a video game. You don't want to gamify something too much and kind of it then lose a little bit of its meaning, especially if you know, as you've done, as I said, built everything so cohesively, so it all ties together
Yeah.
nicely. Yeah,
Yeah, we want it to be fun, but we want it to be meaningful to the story somehow as well, so that you feel like there's a good purpose for collecting them.
exactly. Uh, in that case, since we're talking about sort of future things to happen, stuff like that, uh, I wanted to get your experiences as a team when it comes to not so much the development side, but things like funding and what
Mhm.
that means for you as a studio, like how you went about doing that, what was your experience like, and then also what that means for you, like when you got funding, what were you able to then sort of consider for the future? What was the next step? What was available to you because of getting X, Y, and Z funding and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite an amazing experience for us so far. I mean, going from Ivan and Blythe working together on sort of 2D, quite arty projects and exhibiting them and things, but working on that very much as a passion project, um, to creating this game, which we're kind of 5 months or so into development of A Home Below so far. It very much was a new idea when we started the transfuser program, which we put together a proposal for it. We had this idea, we'd been pushing around kind of ideas, we'd done some initial programming for it and tested a couple of things out. And we put in an application for Transfuser, which is a program that's open to recent graduates. We'd all just finished our masters um, in various different things, not in
Mm-hmm.
game design, but Ivan and Blythe both were doing a fine arts masters at the Slade, and I'd just done my environmental humanities masters. So we then went through Transfuser, which they don't provide a massive amount of funding to support you, in that they expect you to be working pretty full time on the game for 3 to 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
But the funding obviously doesn't cover you working full time on a game for 3 to 4 months. So it's still very much kind of a passion project coming out of your own time and resources, but with this little bit of extra funding to help. But really, I mean, what Transfuser did for us was providing like a kind of business boot camp or a game
Mm.
course, a game uni course in the short space of 3 to 4 months. It was a huge learning experience for us, that was absolutely amazing. Just getting all of this insight into how the industry works, how to set yourselves up as a company, how to really suss out the business side of making a game and making sure that your game is viable in a market, fits into a market, has the potential to sell, different routes to publication and getting it onto the market. So really, I mean, that was incredibly valuable to us coming from non-game backgrounds, to be kind of brought up to speed to that and given the confidence to set up our own company and really to feel like that we're very comfortable with that and we know what we're doing now. So that was amazing. But then also Transfuser led to several other opportunities, including showcasing at EGX, which was fantastic, and also pitching for UK Game Fund funding, which we were one of 4 teams who were successful with. So, I mean, that's a huge deal for us. That's a lot more funding. It's
That's
about 25,000.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well done. Congratulations. That's brilliant news, obviously, and it's what it's going to allow you to obviously focus now, I guess, in a way that you couldn't before necessarily.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we were kind of balancing trying to work as full-time as possible on the game before, whilst also kind of needing part-time work still to support ourselves and
Hmm.
fitting in all of those hours around each other. Some of us were more full-time, others were more kind of here and there or trying to work full-time around other jobs. But now this is like 5 months where we can all be full-time on the game, but we are also using this to bring in more people. So we are working with a composer and we're bringing on another artist. So we're hopefully going to make a lot more progress a lot quicker. And it will be just really nice to start kind of growing the company and seeing this game really evolve and hitting our milestones, really.
Amazing, fantastic, and again, congratulations to you for getting that funding. It's going to be such a boon, no doubt, to all of you, and great to hear that the team will be growing a little bit as well. I mean, and it sounds like you're doing it sensibly again. You're looking for the people you need, extra artists, a composer and that sort of thing. Do you expect Hermit House to grow to be much bigger than that? Or is that something you'd like it to be? What's the sort of idea for Hermit House as far as a sort of a vision of the studio of the company?
Yeah, I mean, we would hope eventually to be a bit bigger than we are now. I mean, we don't really want to grow rapidly. The kind of scale of game that we're making isn't big enough to need like a huge team. It's more to do with our needs at the time. So, I mean, at the moment, bringing in music is quite important to us, and having enough people working on the art that we can really refine our assets, refine our animations, and really bring to life all of the different sea creatures, and make them feel kind of beautiful and wonderful to interact with. That's the most important thing to us at the moment. So we know we need to bring those people on board. So I think, yeah, it's going to be a case of growing as we require it, but also it's important to us. We've been through a process for each of these people that we're bringing on board to make sure that they're the right fit for us. So not just in terms of their skills and their qualifications, but that they care about the environmental and kind of nature side of things. I mean, as a company, we are committed to making games about nature that inspire kind of curiosity and a sense of wonder around the natural world and that connect people with nature in interesting ways, and bring to life kind of nature in games, not just as a backdrop, but as a kind of living series of ecosystems, that you can engage with. So that's really important to us that people understand our mission as they're joining. But yeah, I mean, it's very much a case of expanding very slowly as we need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, with the right sort of people. Yeah, you want those people who share the same interests and passion as you do, and not just have the skill sets you need. It's like there'll be plenty of people who work that way in the industry. It's an industry that kind of almost demands that. It's a lot of the sort of larger scale projects in particular. But with a small studio like that, where it's going to be so closely knit, you'd
Yeah.
almost need everybody to be on the same page. Otherwise, you're only going to come across possible situations, down the line, and that's the last thing you need. You don't need to bring undue stress into something which is already going to be requiring everybody's attention 24/7 almost. So yeah, I can appreciate, as you say, taking your time with it, but at the same time, looking to grow in a way that's going to benefit the long term of Hermit House. Well, in that case, yeah, let's talk a bit about the future then beyond a home below, if you're okay with doing that.
Mhm.
Um, After a home below, you've already said that you'd be looking to do more games around the environment and things like that. Do you see a home below as being something that you'd want to sort of branch out from? Is it a single, encapsulated title that you're like, once it's done, we move on now to a complete different kind of setting and in gameplay style or anything like that? Or is this something that actually you as a studio feel like, oh, actually, you know what, 3D, you know, sandbox games, that's where we work. That's where we're having a good time. It's where we feel we are doing good work, and that as a team we come together really easily, and it kind of just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes and no. I've expressed that I think we are committed to making
Mm,
games about nature,
yeah.
and we want to create these kind of short, cinematic, moving, quite beautiful experiences. So a home below is kind of intended to be 3 to 5 hours, like a short artistic game experience. We envision ourselves, I think, making more of the same kind of games with this in mind of having these kind of short, beautiful experiences centered around nature and the environment. I think in that sense, A Home Below is its own self-contained thing. I don't think that we would do like sequels or build it out into a franchise, but I think we envision ourselves as being able to repurpose some of the assets and systems we've created in future games. So, I mean, before coming to this game idea, we've all created some previous games. I myself have written a narrative based, like text based game
Hmm.
based around octopuses. And given that we are putting an octopus in this game, there are probably elements that we can use towards a game like that. It would be quite different in feeling. But I think we are really enjoying the 3D space and we really enjoy the kind of non-violent, casual, kind of cozy game atmosphere. But that's not to say we wouldn't experiment with slightly different genres, but we just have this kind of unifying mission at the heart of what we're doing of trying to focus things around nature. We do also have ideas for future games that are in different biomes, so set, on the surface rather than underwater. And building those out then gives us assets we can play with for other things, other games set in different. Yeah, I mean, I think really we have a unifying mission across our titles that we hope will color everything that we make that has this focus on nature and environmental stories. But we wouldn't limit ourselves to just saying, we're only going to make 3D underwater adventure games. We might start there and repurpose assets for different things and branch out into lots of different stories and biomes.
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah. You don't want to be pigeonholed entirely as as you said, the underwater 3D non-violent narrative. You could do a bit more than that if you want to, sort of thing. But I appreciate in particular the non-violent, the non-combat element of the game as well, because as someone who's played games for over 3 decades, and the vast majority of them containing combat and sort of violent themes and stuff like that, would never want them to go away. But I appreciate the sort of the growing swell of games that approach sort of embrace non-violence, if anything. And I've been playing quite a few of those sort of titles over the last couple of years, and I find that I have almost a lot of the time the games lean into it, but there's a meditative kind of relaxing quality to them, and I definitely found that with the Home Below as well. That as much as I was still really curious about everything and intrigued to learn more and having fun with the mechanics, the sounds, the soundscape, the level design, the visuals. There's a lovely sort of dream quality, it seems, to the sort of the visual design of the game as well,
Mm.
where everything's so sort of soft and soothing, even at moments of sort of supposed peril, like the sort of snooping octopus outside the window. Um, there's still like a kind of I guess almost like a Pixar-esque charm to it all, if that comes across right. I don't know. There is something about it being like one of those little shorts you get before watching the big, Pixar film and something like that. It's
Yeah.
got that sort of energy, which I really like.
Well, yeah, I'm really glad that came across. I mean, that's definitely what we want. We want to be creating a game that encourages discovery and moments of kind of beauty and exploration. And to do that, I think you have to have more of a kind of casual, accessible gaming style. And I think it's been amazing seeing as well what that allows for in terms of how people play. I mean, watching people play at EGX, I think every single person who came to play had a completely different way of playing the game, but it allows for that because it's not all kind of combat driven or anything. And obviously there are these moments of threat, the octopus, also the fish,
Mm.
that will come back later, but in controlled ways. We're kind of inspired by games like Journey, where there are obviously scarier moments and moments of threat, but they're in very specific locations for very specific reasons at various points in the game. But otherwise, the experience is this kind of wordless, cinematic, very beautiful, peaceful thing. So
Mm.
very much kind of inspired by the atmosphere of games like Journey.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I can, as I said before, I can already sort of see what the game is going to be. I feel like in its entirety, and I'm really, really excited, and obviously got March to look forward to for a new demo. So that will be great to sort of see the progress, and yeah, hope maybe we'll be able to organize a catch up around that sort of time as well, and do an update on this, which would be great. Uh,
Definitely.
Fantastic. Well, look, in which case we're coming kind of winding down here. So to finish off, do you have, say, any sort of tips or advice for other devs, whether they're already working, in very much the same sort of position you're in now, or people looking to get into it, people maybe just finished their degree, anything at all, really, because again, people, you're in the trenches, as it were. You're really there doing it at a level that I think a lot of people want to hear from, because it's great to hear from the people who do really well, but it's great to hear from the people who are still in the process of doing
Mhm.
it, and seeing what it's like at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think definitely if you are sort of still studying or kind of starting to work on something, think about applying for accelerator programs. They are amazing, especially ones like Transfuser that offer you the support and the access to knowledge that they do. Um, with that in mind, sort of things that we've learned from doing the Transfuser program, I would say start thinking about your business plan now. Like how are you going to fund development long term? How are you going to get your game to market? How does it fit into the market? Like, what's your niche? What things is your game using that are tried and tested that are kind of going to be evidence of your game's success? But also, what are you doing that's different to anything else that's out there at the moment? And how you talk about the game, how you then promote it. I mean, start marketing from the get-go. Like, don't wait to make the perfect social media post and the perfect trailer. Invite people into your development process. People are always interested to know how a game takes shape over time. And you're only more likely to gain like a following over time if you start even whilst a game is very new and it transforms a lot over time. I mean, I think we've definitely found that, we had an incredible facilitator, mentor figure throughout our transfuser program, Elena from Yaldi Games, who has been fantastic on the business side of things. And she really kind of pushed us to be like, no, start your TikTok now, like just do it, and
Hmm.
start marketing like this, think about your business plan. And she really challenged us to create like a proper pitch around our game from the start. I mean, even as it's been changing, that's been updated all the time throughout the development process. But it's really, really useful to have that stuff in place from the beginning so you know what makes your game special and you know how to represent that properly.
Yeah, absolutely. You may have the best game in the world, but unless you can actually sell it to people, unfortunately, no one will ever know unless they try it purely by
Mm.
chance, I guess. So yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It is that thing where, so many of these art forms that we enjoy so much and, play or watch or whatever it might be, we want them to remain art, and yet they also have to become a product.
Yeah.
I hate to do it, but you know what I mean? We live in that awful situation where the two things have to meet,
Yeah.
and everybody has to somehow be happy with the situation, and thus
Oh,
you
yeah, I
hope
mean,
that
that's
no one.
definitely been a struggle for us
Yeah.
as a group of creatives to suddenly go from we're doing this fun like passion project that's a piece of art to, oh, we actually have to sell this. Like we have
Mm,
to market it. It has to be a business. You know,
yeah.
we're a company now. We have to do all of the business side of things to keep ourselves alive as a company. So yeah. I mean, balancing that is tricky, but it's really good to do from the start.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's very, very sensible advice, and I think some advice that you don't hear that often actually is, the marketing, but not just in itself, but start early, get on that, even if
Yeah.
all you have is a bunch of sketches or grey boxing or
Mhm.
10-second loop of a bit of music, get it out there, get your profiles, as you say, your TikToks, Instagrams, whatever they might be, and find your audience, and they'll stick around, because once they've seen it at its lowest is the wrong way of putting it, at its earliest, we'll say that, at its earliest, they'll be there throughout, because they will have enjoyed seeing the journey with you, and will only be more excited to experience the final product, having kind of been there alongside you for so much of it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
also really good for community-driven design if you're sharing stuff that early to get people's responses to your initial concepts, to see whether people like them or whether they have advice on how to shape them from that early stage. I mean, that's great if you can get the feedback that early. That means that people are involved in shaping a game that they will play. You're kind of creating your player base by sharing that with them that early.
I think that, yeah, absolutely. My bit of advice would be to name the octopus Harry, but you don't have to take that. That's entirely, that's entirely, it's a little side thing. Uh, but before we disappear though, Jess, any sort of final thoughts or messages or anything like that you'd like to share with us before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I mean, we're working towards a publisher demo towards the end of January and a public demo at the end of March. We are hoping to target some things like Steam Next Fest, following that in June for our demo, and then looking at kind of full release probably the year afterwards, like summer 2026. We'd imagine it's going to take us a little while to get the full thing out, but we are not on Steam just keep your eyes peeled because we will be launching our page quite soon.
Fantastic.
And follow our social channels. We're on X, Twitter as Hermit House Limited. We're also on TikTok and Instagram as Hermit House Games. And you can also follow us on Patreon, where we have specifically like ecological devlogs, where we've been sharing a lot of our research behind the game. And you can access all of that whether you're free or paid as a member. It's completely up to you how you want to support us, but any kind of feedback and engagement is always super helpful to us, and we really appreciate the support.
Excellent. Thank you. I mean, and again, yeah, to everybody who obviously watches this, please do go and follow and keep an eye on Hermit House and A Home Below. A small recommendation from me as well, actually. You guys should definitely get onto Blue Sky. I think your
Yeah,
studio, your ethos, everything about it is so in tune with that platform. I think, and especially because there's a lot of people who are now joining it, it seems. I think you guys would find you get a quite a nice following quite quickly there
yeah,
in
we've
particular.
noticed mass
So
migration. We will be jumping on board with that. Yeah.
excellent. But I'm glad to see you there when you arrive. I'll welcome you. But no, thank you again so much, Jess, for this. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And I hope we can do it again soon in the future when there's more Home Below to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that, please consider leaving a like, and we would love to hear your thoughts on the conversation as well. So any comments below would be greatly appreciated. And of course, please consider subscribing to the channel for any more gaming news or visiting the website at www.gscsolink.com. gamersocialclub.ca. Take care, everyone.